Today on the podcast, I have Shubhak Chube. He is the CEO and founder of Intentional Product Management. It's an organization that basically helps people that are in the product management career continue to grow and learn and build more credibility and probably move more from kind of tactical to strategic. His experience and background are pretty interesting. He spent some time, some startups, and then he was at Google for a while. And he talks a little bit about everything from pricing to how AI is going to change product management to just thinking about 0 to 1 product management versus after you have a product and how you manage all the stakeholders. This was a good discussion around just how do you manage the customer, how do you think about all the stakeholders, how do you be more strategic, how do you think about being a product manager when maybe the founder has really the product vision in their head. I really enjoyed this conversation. It's near and dear to my heart, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Shobit, welcome to the podcast. I appreciate you making the time.
I'm really excited to be here, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm excited too because you're going to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, product management. And so most of my career, I would say, was a product guy, and most of my time at Concur and what I've done was in product management. And I think we're kind of in an interesting kind of inflection point with all the technology and tools and AI components of this. So I'm excited about a pretty interesting conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting. Concur was actually one of the products that when we started to use it, I was like, oh, this is so much better than what we were using before, whether to book travel or expenses or whatnot. So I'm excited about that as well.
Yeah, well, lots of people, it's funny. I used to talk to people on you're going to the Hertz rental car and you're on the bus and somebody's taking pictures of their stuff and talking about Concur and stuff. And you ask them about it and they're like, product sucks. And it's like, well, because I have to do expense reports and then your company gets to configure it any way they want. So I stopped asking after some point in time. But anyway, so maybe talk a little bit about what you're doing today. I think you are the founder and CEO of International Product Management, which gives us a little bit of sense of what you're doing. But maybe talk to me a little bit about your path and kind of what you're doing today.
Perfect. Quick correction, it's Intentional Product Manager.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Intentional.
That's totally fine. My best friend was like, it's so amazing you've launched International Product Manager. I'm like, cool, almost there, but it's intentional. But anyway, yeah. So background, I was a product manager, first at a bunch of startups, then over at Google, and I loved my job. But at the same time, I went through many failures in some sense, where I was like, my manager told me, hey, cool, you did a lot of work, but ultimately we don't know what you get known as. We don't know what you get known for. And we didn't feel the impact over this year. So I had to do a lot of backtracking and figure out how do things work in this world? What should I be actually doing? And that led me to teaching some of those lessons, which ultimately ended up as me launching Intentional Product Manager, working 2 jobs while at Google, doing this part-time, and then eventually exiting out of Google and running this full-time. So ultimately what we do is help product managers have a career that they can be proud of, help them get to that potential where they're doing the work, but they're not getting recognized for it, whether internally or in this market, and help them get to that level quickly.
So maybe we should just start with kind of how do you find product management? I think it's different in different companies, and it has a wide range of expectations depending on the organization, and the skill set and background can be varied as well. And so maybe just kind of give me your definition of kind of what you think the job really entails, and then the skills that actually are valuable to being successful in it.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, it's a general management job.
Okay.
So you're responsible for the success of the product. People who think themselves as founders or general managers, those are the ones that succeed. Now, that might involve many hats. It might involve the hat of, hey, I work with engineering to figure out what should be built. Maybe it involves the hat of figuring out what is worth building in the first sense and what are the business goals we are trying to achieve. Maybe it's putting on the hat of a customer advocate. Are we really taking into account what customers need and want? Or are we building what our stakeholders are just they're telling us what to do? So I think those are the hats that product managers play. Now, the core challenge, in my opinion, is that there is that classic definition, but people also know that everybody wants to be a product manager. Not everyone, sorry, I shouldn't say that. But like a lot of people want to be product managers. So they use the title to bring in a lot of folks into roles that are not exactly product management. They're much more delivery, program management, project management, execution. Nothing wrong with those professions. Just call it what it is, right? Don't give a bigger title for that. So I think that's where a lot of the variability is. And then of course there's a variability in the kinds of products you work with. So B2C, the trade-offs and what you need to work on might be very different than B2B, might be very different from internal products. I think that's another case that adds a lot of variability here.
So one thing I didn't hear from you was adoption, right? This is one thing that I guess we talked about at Concur quite a bit. Was our product managers had some responsibility for adoption, and basically even saying, "Hey, look, how do you think this is like? You're going to spend dev time and effort on it. What's the adoption going to be from your customers?" And I think we see this all the time, right? Where it's like somebody says in the sales cycle, "I need this to buy." And then basically it's not a feature that gets widely adopted. And so you kind of look at it and say, is that a good use of dev time? Maybe talk to me a little bit about like, is that something that you think is important? Do you think it's a majority of people's jobs in product management, or is it something that should be? You can create some weird incentives by doing some of that, pressing too hard. But I do think it gives some good thought on saying, if we're going to spend the dollars on this, what is the adoption in the base going to be, whether it's net new customers or existing clients, and getting them to really think about that.
I mean, broadly speaking, business metrics are a huge reason why we do this. And frankly speaking, if it was straightforward to figure out what thing should we build so that it moves the business metric that you're responsible for by the maximum amount possible, you wouldn't need product managers, right? Because ultimately that's what they're figuring out. So because of the ambiguity around it, because of the fact that you could go in 20 different directions to move that metric, that's why we have product managers. Now, at the same time, you mentioned adoption, but there could be other business metrics. It's also sometimes worth figuring out what's the right metric to optimize for. And different teams might have different goals, especially as you think of consumer products. Somebody could be responsible for net new user activation. Somebody could be responsible for engagement and retention. And another person could be responsible for monetization, making sure they go from free tier to pay tier and whatnot. And so you could be optimizing different parts of the funnel. Huge aspect of product management.
Okay, well, that's good. Like, maybe talk to me a little bit about a lot of the people that we work with are going from 0 to 1. And so to me, product management is probably different 0 to 1 versus scaling a product, right? And so in a lot of cases, these are founders that are probably doing that. Their job titles are everybody. They're doing everything. And maybe talk to me a little bit about, they're still doing product management, but I think it's maybe a little bit more targeted. And you're really trying to figure out like, what are the minimum number of features that I can go build that creates enough value for them to get on the platform where I can build a relationship and figure out what's next. Versus, now you have a bunch of customers, you have sales, you have a bunch of different people that are kind of asking you to build new things and you have to sift through it. So maybe talk to me a little bit about 0 to 1 product management versus 0 to 10 kind of post once you have a product, or 1 to 10.
Love it. So 0 to 1 product management, in my mind, there's 2 phases of product management: pre-product market fit and post-product market fit. What are your goals when you don't have product market fit? It's to get product market fit. Anything that's not relevant to the goal should not be done. I'll talk a bit more about details of that. And then post-product market fit, that's when you're trying to optimize the funnel. Hey, can we get the same customers at a lower cost? What do we do to now maybe 10x our customer base and grow it much faster, like removing friction, all those sort of things. So first of all, how do you know you have product market fit? For that, my favorite go-to is by this guy named Rahul Vora. He's CEO of Superhuman. Superhuman, the email company, who just got acquired by Grammarly. I love the product. his thing was, if you told your customers, hey, we're shutting down, sorry, you can't use this product anymore, how many of those will like fight you to be able to still use it? If it's less than, I think his number was 40%. If less than 40% are not like fanatically obsessed about it, you don't have product market fit, keep iterating. So it's that minimum lovable product. That's what you're trying to figure out. Now, uh, the job of a product manager early on, back to that question of 0 to 1, it's sort of similar to a founder's job. You're
Mhm.
you're using both a combination of a lot of qualitative research combined with some of your own instincts to figure out what the product should be built and then continuously iterating until you reach that point. That's what it is. The thing is, this is actually much more of an art than a science, and I think it translates to more of a science later on, which does mean that you got to have that instinct, for that vision for um, something that needs to be built here. I'm going to use something from Peter Thiel. His whole point was startups exist because you believe something that everybody else does not believe, and you are right and they're wrong. So, like Airbnb, it would have not existed had they not started to believe that, hey, there's something here about people putting their own homes on this platform, and we can make that happen, and people would be willing to do that. Everybody would have told them that's just a stupid idea. I'm never going to give my home to someone to live on, even if they paid me money. So I think that's where they are. I think one of the things product managers, if the title is product manager and there's a founder, I just want to say it's totally okay if you don't own the vision early on. In fact, the founder owns a vision.
Right.
It's okay for you to execute, it's okay for you to bring real data, but partner with the founder if your title's product manager. And if your title is founder, well, more power to you. So that'd be my thoughts on thinking through this entire journey.
So one of the things I didn't hear from you was just getting close to the customer, right? I think sometimes product managers lose sight of this. Maybe early on when they're scrapping because they have no customers, they're pretty customer centric, and I think they drift along away from listening to the customer. And maybe in your example of Airbnb, like getting more feedback from the customer is not going to get you to the outcome because he had a vision and it was a whole different paradigm. But it seems like most startups, the customer has, like, you have to listen to their pain, you have to understand what problem they're trying to go solve, you have to be able to quantify it, and then and it's not about telling them the features, it's about listening to the problem that they have. And I think this is good. Product managers are really good at this, and they're not only good at this from a customer perspective, but every stakeholder in the business.
I agree. I, um, I'll say a few things. So first of all, they're good from stakeholder management perspective, but if they treat the customer as one level above all stakeholders, most stakeholders tend to fall in line. It's like, cool, oh, this is what our customers need. This is what our customers need. Then I've had product managers decide, oh, by the way, I spoke to 10 customers. This is what I found out. Everybody else shut up because nobody else had really spoken to customers. Now, being close to customers, I think that's purely an environment issue in the sense of what happens. Okay, your product gains some traction. You're like, I don't need to talk to a customer every day. Stakeholders right around you, they're demanding your attention. If you just let things float, you'll be full of engineering meetings, stakeholder meetings, marketing meetings, and customers get cut out. So you have to, in the absence of something, change the environment to make sure that happens right. It could be that you always have a discipline or discovery sprints, and you're always running those before delivery sprints. We used to, one of the things I started with my group was, hey, Thursday 11 to 12 is customer hour. We will have some customer come and talk to us then, which put a forcing function. Hey, we have weekly customer calls. Now, I might change the time because it doesn't work well for the customer, but at least that forcing function was there, that we are having one live conversation. And once, the thing is, it's also highly energizing, not just for product managers, but for engineers. I really advise product managers to be like the go-between. It's like, cool, I'm the voice of the customer. Please don't do that. Bring your engineers in those meetings, bring your UX teams in those meetings. The amount of energy you're going to get, the amount of productivity you're going to get from them because they truly understand the pain points and they feel emotionally invested is like totally worth it. And it's a superpower that you are missing out because you're making the assumptions that engineers just want to code. They just want to like go and work separately. They want to talk to customers. Mostly not true. So
Yeah, and
that
I'd
one
even
more thing
I
I
think
would
there's
say.
even this is even deeper. I guess I'll just use an example for myself. So I was a
Yeah.
product manager at Concur in the early days, and one of my first business trips was go to visit Pfizer. They were an early adopter of Concur. They were down, 42nd Street in New York City, Manhattan, and they flew in everybody that was responsible for globally what they were doing with Concur. There ended up being like 42 people in a room, and I was like, "Holy crap!" And so like I knew the product, but what I didn't understand was every one of those people's jobs and using the product. And I think that like it was a big aha moment to me that's saying there's a difference between understanding theoretically what like the spec that you're building and the problem you're trying to go
Yeah.
solve versus going and sitting with a team that's actually solving problems and you're asking them what's working and what's not. And like that was like just eye opening to me. It was a different context. And there's another one here that's local that we were doing that's around property management. And like going and sitting a day in the shoes of a property manager to understand what they're doing makes you so much more valuable as a property manager. And so I think not only is it about customer interaction, but it's domain expertise and putting yourself in that user's shoes that is so impactful that makes you build better product.
I concur with you.
There you go.
But like to that point, there's even like when you think of feature requests, we used to often get certain feature requests, and it was always interesting to then explore what was behind that, because uh, I think Ash Maurya used the line, "You own the solution, and the customer owns the problem." So if they try to give you a solution, it's not their job. So if they're asking you for a
Yeah.
feature request, if you look behind it, you might actually be able to do much better. And that only comes with when you like sit with them and understand, okay, till now you were using our product. Now you said, cool, give me the data and that's it. If I understand what you're looking to do out of it, I might actually be able to solve the end thing you're trying to put behind it. And so like that way also you get a lot of insight.
You made a comment earlier about how, maybe when you're early on and you're building a company and you're maybe past 0 to 1, but you're basically helping out on product management. The founders are still heavily involved. You're playing more of a tactical role. As the company expands and grows, I think your goal as a product manager should be more strategic, right? And so
Yep.
you can tactically help them basically ship product and make sure it's the right stuff. But being a business leader is a different step. And so maybe talk to me about that transition where it's like
Yeah.
if the founder is really providing kind of the product vision, how do you
Yeah.
go from being tactical to being strategic?
Okay. So first of all, I think you have to be pretty strategic early on as well.
Okay.
Now, because translating the vision into a strategy that's grounded in market facts and reality, I think that's the real work of product management. That's very, very strategic work. What data do you need to analyze? What are the right metrics to optimize for? Out of the different pricing models, which one should you go for? That doesn't come from the vision. That comes from a lot of hard work and a lot of strategic thinking. I think over time you can start to own the vision itself for different parts of the product and let the founder own the company vision. So that's how your role expands, because now, there's 5 different product lines or whatnot. So that's how your role might expand. But I think you need to be highly strategic from day one. That's not going to change. Except your job is not to come up with the hypothesis, the vision. Vision is a hypothesis, right? This is what the world could look like. This is the role we are going to play. This is the future. You're going to either prove that, disprove that, or most probably you're going to iterate that in many different ways. And you have to be highly strategic to be able to do that even early on.
So I think in a lot of these companies, that's hard, and I think it's. I maybe shape it a little bit differently. I think a lot of it is business acumen, right? I think it is strategic. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, do you know how much money you have in the bank account, and basically where you're getting sales, and basically are you moving up the food chain as far as expanding your reach? Are you getting to larger deals? What's the sales cycle look like? What's the price point? What's margin look like? Like, there's a lot of stuff that I think to be strategic, as you've said, I see a lot of product managers that maybe have a hole in kind of this business acumen. They're not comfortable understanding kind of the trend lines of the business. And that could be from sales. In a lot of cases, it comes from sales. Where are we going? Do we have enough money in the bank account? Are we growing? Are we trying to raise another round of capital? There's some business driver that needs to be tied back to the product. And there's a delta in there. And not all the time are the product managers good enough to understand what does that translate into what I need to bring to the table. And so, like, maybe agree or disagree, but I'm kind of curious. I mean, do you think that that's something that's important? And then how do you develop some of those skills if you don't have them?
Yeah, I totally agree that it's very important. I guess I'll break it into two phases or two things. Number one, do you have the opportunity to do that at this company? One of the things that founders don't like to give up is control. So I remember there was a conversation I had with some founders, and they were like, all the reasons why they need a product manager. And I was like, okay, are you willing to give up control? Are you willing to let them decide what goes on the backlog? They were like, well, with my approval. I'm like, yeah, you're not ready for a product manager. Just don't waste anyone's time. But so does the opportunity exist? Once it exists, just surround yourself with the right mentors inside and outside the company and help them figure out. Like, my first product job, I was not awesome. I was kind of awful, but I had 3 or 4 mentors around me where I would be like, hey, I'm faced with this situation. They were like, this is how to think about it. I'm like, cool, thank you. And then I do think a lot of your past experiences, if they were anything to do with this, could be very helpful. Like, my past consulting experience really helped. My past sales experience really helped out in those aspects. But it also took a year of seasoning for it to like really sink in.
It's funny. There was a guy. His name was Jeff Sanger, and he came with an acquisition that we did, and it was early in Concur's pivot to SaaS. We were basically offering as a SaaS offering, and he was in the Bay Area, and basically every 2 weeks I had to go down there and meet with him. And one of the things that he did was like massively uncomfortable to me would be he'd take me to lunch or he'd take me to a meeting, and he'd say, you're the CEO of Yahoo. What would you do? And, Yahoo at the time was going through, all their changes and stuff. But he would try to find some, another one he gave me was like, would you rather be Box or Dropbox? And essentially what he was really trying to do was sharpen my business thinking. He was like, there are no wrong and right answers. And I'm not asking you to do a bunch of research. What I'm asking you to do is say, how do you think through these problems? And what data do you need to make better decisions? And I credit him a lot because those were not fun conversations. It got better over time. But I do think that he challenged me to like think through kind of how business is being done, what are the drivers of it, what are the root causes of the decisions they're making, and then how does it shape everything else you do downstream. And he's still in business, he's still doing startups, he's an amazing guy, but it's like one of the things that as a mentor, I was always amazed, and I tried to do that with other people that I managed because I thought it was like a really healthy exercise.
Interestingly, right now, if you look at the company I run, we do a lot of that. But it's all done from a context of passing really difficult product management interviews at Google and Meta and whatnot. Yeah. Now, people don't like those interviews because it's a lot of pressure and they are doing all these things. But actually, when they get really good at that, it's similar questions. Should Google enter the ride-sharing space? A lot to think about. But it does help later on. People always come back and tell me, oh, this helps me day to day. Now, the thing is, if you didn't have that incentive of landing that next role, very often people don't go through those deep exercises to build out their muscle. They're sort of being forced to build it here. And so it helps out later. But I'm glad you had such a wonderful mentor and you were able to do that without that pressure of trying to find that job.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. I already had
amazing.
the job. I hope I was holding on to it. You never know.
Nice.
Which maybe brings us to the next point, which is how do you like continue to grow, right? I think like you've talked about this a couple times where it's accretive,
Yeah.
but I think as product managers, you're pulled in 50 different directions. There's not a lot of space to think about either competitive changes, marketplace changes. You look at Concur today, and it's like if we were going to go design Concur, we'd probably do it in a totally different way. And now
Yeah.
there's Ramp, and there's all these other tools that are coming, and they're trying to rethink that whole experience. But like that takes time. That takes time away, and then it takes energy and investment. And I think good product managers find space to basically continue to make their skill set better, as
Yeah.
well as understand. And that's super hard when you're pressed in 50 different meetings, and a lot of context switching.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. I think I would say two things. One, maybe we'll go deeper into later, which is AI. I do think there's a lot of enablers it provides for product managers to get more efficient. But then back to I mentioned environment. I think you also have to create that. So just as an example, hey, I'm gonna spend time this week thinking about competitor strategy, about building out our 3-year roadmap and whatnot. That's never gonna happen. Somebody's gonna book meetings over your calendar, whatnot. Like people try to force that. No. Okay. How do you reshape your environment to do that? You say, I'm gonna do this. So for that, I'm gonna tell my manager, hey, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna present it to you and then to the skip level in 2 weeks. Okay, so now you have that deadline, self-enforced but public. Then you go back, and when somebody books a calendar a meeting, you're like, no, no, no. I have a presentation coming to the skip level, which is this, so I have to prep.
Do it. Yeah.
And you got to put those forcing functions both for yourself, but also to influence others to not take away all your time. And now it's all gone in tactical. So I'm just a believer in your environment shapes you more than you think. And any incremental change you make towards it just changes everything for you.
Yeah, I
Makes
totally
it
agree
much
with you.
easier.
I think that, I know myself personally that if I'm scheduled to the hilt, I'm a dull crayon. I'm not very sharp. And
Yep.
so I do need to create some space to think, to
Yeah.
read, and if I don't have some of that, I'm not the best employee. So, but I think as when you're young and you're trying to figure this out, you just want to schedule all your time because that's how you think you're being productive. And I think that's a fallacy that you need to create some space to do some other things.
Todd, you just said something like super insightful, which is just one level deeper. That's how you are being productive. And then the company is also not, I think that's the other part, they're not doing enough to give you a sense of what productivity looks like. So that's why companies which do like, cool, we can have a business review every quarter. Okay, that forces you to do that and like forces you to present the roadmap. And that also tells you this is valued, this is productive work versus get the next feature shipped out.
Yeah, and it's not always as tangible, right? It's not like I spent this hour and I got this output. I mean, you're basically trying to build some muscle memory that helps something that maybe 6 months down the road
Yeah.
helps you frame a problem. And so there has to be some trust. But I think what you're really saying is there needs to be investment in people, and
Yeah.
if you want them to scale, especially in startups, I think this is one of my like key themes is, and I think this is one of the things we got right at Concur. We basically built leaders for tomorrow. And if you're constantly doing that, we went. I think I was there from 7 million to 1.2 billion, and my amount of personal change to go through all those steps was ridiculous, right? It's like I had to do
yeah.
so many things and relearn, but like they gave you the opportunity to go do it, and they had an attitude of we want people that basically were here in the beginning to continue to scale for as long as they possibly can, and that was a commitment. And it was messy. We didn't always do it right, but I think internally that's part of how we maintained a culture and continue to grow and execute.
I just want to add one more thing here, like because that is such a rarity that you're at a startup and you're provided all these things. And I think one of the other rarities are really good managers of product managers that both are themselves great and at the same time really care and set up the right structure for their teams. And as a consequence of that, sometimes my advice to people is okay, well, you're looking at all these companies. If you want to go work at Google for a couple of years, to sharpen that craft and then go to these startups, it's not such a bad idea. Just like thinking across the market. If you hit that unicorn manager at the perfect company at a startup, there's nothing like that, but chances are low.
So I'd even lean in further to what you're saying. I think that a lot of startups that we see hire people that want to be in product management but have no formal training. And so it is a mess. Like, I think what they're doing is well intended, but they're not in a structured environment. And so I would even say, if you're really interested in this, getting some experience in a structured product management before you go to a startup that you think has got possibilities, I think pays dividends. Because I think you just don't really understand what you don't know. And so you could read books, you can do all sorts, you can figure it out. But I think that if you got 5 people that are trying to figure that out, it's not it's not very efficient.
I agree. Yeah, I started my career in product management in startups, and then went for Google for larger companies like Google later on. I say if I had to redo things, I would flip it.
Reverse them. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. I had some in my notes here that you were like a limited partner in Outside VC. And so maybe talk a little bit about what that was like. I mean, that's definitely a different hat, right? And so now you're looking at startups from a very different lens. Maybe you're still looking at them from a product lens, which you probably could, and you still do. But give me a little bit of experience about like what you were doing, what you learned from that, and were there some good takeaways from that experience?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually still LP. I just invested in their second fund.
Oh, okay.
But
good.
I am that's purely investment. So I know the founder of Outside VC for a long time. Awesome guy. Ethan Austin is the name. And literally when he started, I was like, cool. Like, I can't, write you the same checks that a large thing would. But like, do you have a friend and family entry? He was like, yeah, I do. Yeah. Cool. So I'm just writing checks there. I'm not deeply involved in
evaluation.
That. Plus, in valuation or additional investment into like additional angel investment, because this completes out my risk profile for this part of the market.
Sure.
And that's how I do that. A lot of people do a lot of different things, but I'm not involved to that level.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I do the same thing. I've got an angel investment strategy that you do. These are high risk, high reward. And, like if it works out, great. Some of those are going to go to zero. That's how it just goes. And so, but it is interesting to figure out, like, I'm on like an angel investment board where we were evaluating talent. And it is interesting to figure out, like, can you see how if they executed well, then they change an industry or they continue to grow. And sometimes it's apparent, sometimes it's not. And some of the ones that you think aren't going to go end up doing just fine. And then other ones you think are sure hits don't make it. And so it's just kind of how it goes. And so it's an investment in numbers, I think, is the way that one goes. So maybe the one that I'm most interested in talking to you about is the role of AI in product management. So the thesis for me is we have traditionally looked at design of products in kind of a linear workflow. I'm going to use B2B because that's my world. And so you have a workflow, you have a series of steps, and we just build for that. And so my experience, your experience are going to be very much the same in all of those. And so you look at a lot of legacy products that are out there. And I pick on Salesforce, I could pick on SAP, I could pick on any of these legacy companies, but they all now have a AI strategy that they're basically trying to retrofit or add in tools on top of legacy products. And I think this is a great opportunity for startups to basically rethink some of that. If you had a greenfield opportunity to rethink this business process with the tools of AI and basically making it personalized. And one of the stories that I tell that I think is kind of interesting to this was one of the guys that was on a podcast with me a while ago. He had some neurodivergent experiences where he didn't work like everybody else. And so what did he do? He built an entire Google profile, Google Doc profile of how he wanted to work, fed it to ChatGPT, and it basically started to give him information in a way he was way more comfortable with. And when he didn't log in and tried to do chat, he basically got the same prompts, and it was in a totally different way. And so to me, that's an experience where I think we can start bringing that type of personalization and rigor to some of our product management strategy, but there's a change in the way that we think about this. And I'm just curious from your perspective, we have a plethora of tools. The process to build is getting cheaper and faster. Will the experience get, dramatically change? And can we get to more of this personalized world that we want to, that is beneficial to and different for each one of us?
Yeah. Maybe I'll break this into 3 subtopics. So,
Sure.
one, product managers using AI tools. You should cut out 80% of your busy work. You're writing a PRD? Awesome. Put all the thought behind it. Have it drafted from 20% to 80%. Finish it. You want to do some tests with users? Well, learn how to use Lovable or something like that to create a prototype. You cannot write production code with it. That's still hard.
Yep.
You need engineers. You need really strong engineers. They can do it much better, but you don't need to be blocked on a designer to test something. So unblock yourself, automate your busy work. But when it comes to AI native products, so the second thing that is going to change once you introduce AI is the level of ambiguity and technical risk is suddenly gone up. Because look, you're building a tool that's built on a database that has this thing, cool, it might take longer, shorter, scalability issues, but you have reasonable confidence it will work. It might never work with AI. It might produce results that you're like, this is the worst output. I cannot show it to users. I've iterated many times. We're going to call this a failure, even though we've spent 6 months in it. The underlying models don't support it. And then you have all these additional considerations like, what if it hallucinates? What if it misbehaves? What if it starts to give output that's just doesn't make any sense? AI is super confident. It thinks it never makes a mistake, but it does all the time. How do you actually improve it over time? So can you use that human feedback to figure out where you need to iterate on it, make it better, and is your product learning over time? So it's just a new game with a lot more complexity that you should be willing to figure out. And a lot of people talk about prompt engineering as a very important skill set. That's what it is. It's basic coming up with evals, which is, can you build sort of testing for different kinds of AI products in different cases such that it's behaving well. So it's like a child. You got to monitor its behavior really well. And then the last element, let me know if I'm talking too much, but
Nope.
the last element is basically, can you really reimagine the workflow in a AI native world? So my favorite example, it's a product I love. It's one called Descript, Descript. It's a video editing tool, except the way you edit now is it transcribes everything, mostly correct, 99% correct. You want to remove something, just delete the word and the video will be edited automatically. You want to remove fillers, there's literally a button, remove fillers. Don't make really sharp edits. Remove it. All fillers are gone. It's amazing. It's nowhere as good as professional editing tools that a professional editor might use. But for a person like me, it's a lifesaver. Captions come in. So just you got to be able to figure out what being AI native can enable, and go for that. So that'd be the last thing I would say.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think, how do you design in that world, though? I guess is what I'm really trying to get at. Do you feel like there's some, I think that your comments about using AI tools early and often, to get comfortable with them and understand, I think is good, because I think, a lot of large corporations, don't want them to do that. They're basically saying, either IP-wise or we'll come up with the policy. And so that kind of slows things down. And I think people have a propensity to say, maybe my job's at risk, so I don't play with them. So I think there's some fear there. But, I guess I guess I'm trying to figure out how is the workflow, or how does the change in how you design when you are thinking about this from an AI native first? I guess you have to be familiar with the tools, but you have to like rethink the workflow a little bit to basically do
Yeah.
it. Like, I mean, your example with the video editing is a good one, right? Where it's like, why should I
Yeah.
have to figure out exactly where it is if the text is there and I can start right there and pull that out, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that just makes it so much easier. But
Yeah.
somebody's thought about that from a reverse, saying, how can I make this easy?
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, it's no different than like some of the earlier discussions we were having was what should Yahoo do at this point, right? Like you're putting the hat on. Essentially, you're trying to marry, three things: business, tech, user. Now you just got to know the capabilities of AI enough from a tech side to be like, okay, cool, we have this new tech. What are the possibilities it has? And then you do prioritization based on whatnot. Like I can totally understand if an established product line can't be like, cool, we're going to reimagine everything because basically then their revenue is just gone. Maybe they do it more of an add-on. Maybe they build agents to automate some of the most painful pieces of their whole thing. I kind of see it as one more tech tool that people have, uh, but one that changes your workflow in terms of it's not a straightforward path to production. And there is more risk of a lot more iterations, as well as the whole thing not being really worth it for the use case you had initially imagined. We had cases where we tried to use AI and we were like, cool, this output, this sucks. I mean, this was even before ChatGPT, but we're not going to get anywhere. But even at my company, Intentional Product Manager, we've been able to build for different workflows in our coaching practice. Be like, cool, you iterate first with AI, and then we'll take a look at your whatever, but it can get you to the 80% level at least. That's been
Yeah, and I
very
think
helpful.
one of the things I guess I hear from you that I think I want to reinforce is your company needs to, at least in development, maybe have a strategy around this, right? So how do we build an infrastructure that you can actually play with that becomes
Yeah.
part of a tool set that you can build off of from a product management standpoint? If the responsibility to come up with all of the stuff is on you, I think you're, like you said, you're going to have problems. I think, the open source tools are getting better, right? And so
Yeah.
even if you want to do some validation on some of the things you think are hallucinating or there's a chance that it's going to do it, you can do some, basically the output and then ask it to say, does this seem realistic, and prove it? Like there's some things that you can do to basically mitigate that if you think that's important. And so, but I do think your company as a whole needs to have some sort of AI strategy that's a framework that allows product managers to leverage and work off of that.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. Maybe the last topic I would talk about was that we haven't talked a little bit about in this is, and I see product managers struggle with it, is pricing. So especially in startups, and then I think even in today's day and world, where you're starting to see more and more people talk about outcome-based pricing, right? And so it's not per head, it's not per seat, it's not per usage. It's basically an outcome, and I think that's interesting. It does align incentives better. It's variable, or it can be variable from a finance perspective, and sometimes finance doesn't like that because they can't count on what am I going to do. If it's a small cost, it's not that big of a deal. But maybe give me your 2 cents on kind of pricing. How do people get experience, and how do they think about pricing? And then what about kind of outcome pricing or changes that maybe AI will kind of drive as far as how people actually pay for stuff?
Yeah. I guess two things, like in my opinion, product managers should seek help on the actual pricing, as in the numbers, but where they should really weigh in on the business model, like which
Okay.
business model makes sense. And to be honest, this is a decision they need to drive often with exec teams. The business models exist. You're not going to come up with a brand new business model that didn't exist. You got to evaluate what's the right fit for you and what makes sense for the customers. So back to the business tech user angle, that's what you got to figure out. I think with AI, the challenge is actually on the cost side.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand the outcome-based pricing, but then the cost of running anything with AI is dramatically higher than anything else. So I think where they need to be careful of is really evaluating if you took all the top use cases and everything, would it still be profitable? Would it still add additional margin or whatever it is there. And I think that's where a lot of the challenge lies, because the cost of actually running an AI is also unknown and changing quite a bit over time. So I think that's where it presents the biggest challenges.
So I guess one of the things I've seen with a lot of startups as they're doing this, they'll start with a commercial API integration that's maybe costly and maybe impacts margins pretty negatively. But they're trying to figure out, like, does this provide the value that they need? And what you're really finding out is, for the most part, is your use case is relatively narrow, that you're trying to use ChatGPT or Claude or Anthropic or whatever it is for. And once you get that done, then basically looking at either open source tools or even finding smaller models that basically are much more in your sweet spot, that are much cheaper over time. And so I don't think you want to go ahead and try to weight your own models right out of the gate. I think what you're trying to do is say, how does this integrate, even if it's not cost effective to start with, but then over time, getting to the point where there's predictability, and now you can go back and say, how do I make this a better margin product for me?
And even if you do use one of those commercial models, there's a significant variation across them. So I remember one of my podcast guests, he talked about trying out Google, trying out all these things, looking at call cost factors, making a decision, then running on that. And to do that, they also needed to run in parallel 3 prototypes to figure out which one actually works, which one doesn't work. So the technical risk was also really high. And then the commercial risk in terms of cost was really high. And that's when they ultimately landed on something that made sense.
I guess the way that I keep thinking about this, though, it's like, I think even if you look at ChatGPT and saying, my time is worth something per hour, and what I'm paying, whether it's $20 or $200 a month, there's a lot of value depending on how you're using it. And I think what I guess is interesting to me is, you think about a lot of these commercial products today, and it's like they're pretty transactional and they're pretty cheap. They solve a problem, don't get me wrong. And it's like, if you look at a manual process versus an automated process, there's a value there. These tools over time, if we get to the agent component of this, can they replace a PhD intern who maybe you're paying $70,000, $80,000, $100,000, right, for work, but you're only charging $15,000. There's a huge difference in the way, if the product is actually solving the problems that you're talking about, the pricing of this is bound to change in some ways, in my opinion. And I think that it's going to continue to go up because there's value in it that is replacing large swaths of potential work that we're doing.
Sure. I mean, $20 a month that I spend on ChatGPT is very, very, very worth it. Like, there's no ROI calculation that's even close. Although one of my favorite things is to hire someone who uses ChatGPT themselves, and then I get the double gains.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the ideal part now. And I think what you're trying to do, at least in these startups, is think about people that are AI first, right? Like, how do I, like you said, use the tools? But I think also in your startup, do you have a platform where you see something that's being done over and over again and you just automate it? Let's put it on LangChain. Let's put it on N8N. Like something to basically say, like, I need to scale, but I need to have that philosophy, not that I want to go do it because that's my job. And that's a big difference, I think, in people's kind of work philosophies, is you're giving me work to do that gives me productivity and shows that I'm adding value, versus, no, I want to automate as much of this possible so I can continue to move up the food chain.
Yeah, 100%. We've done so much automation within our company, and it's amazing what N8N and a call to OpenAI can just even those 2 things can do.
I totally agree with you. Yeah. And I think this is what's going to happen over the next 20 or 30 years, right? All these enterprises have a ton of intellectual property sitting in their organizations that are siloed. And what they're going to have to do is figure out inference to basically surface that data to the right people to basically create scale in every part of their department. It's going to be a huge IT lift for the next 30 years. And that's the way they're going to be competitive. And it's you're starting to see smart companies starting to think about this, but it's going to take a while. But I think if startups do this from day one, like, you're way ahead of the game.
I mean, it just was reminding me of cloud adoption and how long that took and how long it's been around. And same way, AI will move it into everything, but not at the pace at which maybe some people imagine right now.
Well, I think that's a good thing for startups. I think that it creates an opportunity, right? And so
I
if you're
agree.
basically forward from that, then you have a runway that if you continue
Yeah.
to run hard and scared,
Yep.
you'll stay ahead of them. And so I
Yep.
think that's good.
I mean, it's a classic question many startups have, like, "Oh, why can't Google do this?" Well, they're going to take a while. You have time.
They can.
You can figure it
Yeah.
out. They can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The-
it's just not a
yeah.
focus right now.
Yeah.
Those
Exactly.
organizations are big. Well, Shobit, I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your expertise and giving us a little bit more of a snapshot of kind of what product management can do, not only in kind of 0 to 1, but kind of as a career. I think this has been really helpful, and I appreciate you kind of sharing your knowledge.
Thank you so much for having me, Todd. It's a wonderful conversation. I loved it.
So if people wanted to know more about kind of what you're doing, is there some place for them to kind of poke and look?
Yeah, my website and LinkedIn connect with me. That's
Okay.
always one of the best things.
Okay. Well, sounds good. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks again, and hopefully we'll get a chance to follow up on this sometime.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Todd.
Thanks for listening to Startup Stories from the Treehouse. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, follow, or subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you found our conversation helpful, leave a review. It really helps other founders discover our show. For more insight and episode summaries, don't forget to subscribe to the Wildfire Labs Substack. We appreciate your support and can't wait to share more stories with you next time.